People think of us as flesh and bone, but we are an energy field too. You can measure the electromagnetic field with current technology up to 6 feet away from the body surrounding the heart. So you have to be careful with your field. You have to slow your breathing down. You have to keep a certain kind of physiological state in order to operate at that level. Dave Asprey says, a mold's bad. And I go, I'll test for mold. And then turns out I had mold running through my body. I had the inflammation markers to match. I had the MRI scan that showed all the fuzziness. Everything lined up.
Quick shout out to today's sponsor, Taylor. You know that feeling? You've got an important meeting, a first date, maybe a trip coming up, and you're standing in front of your closet thinking, I have nothing to wear, or I don't want to wear the same thing again, even though it's full of stuff. That's exactly what Taylor fixes. A real stylist learns your lifestyle, picks your outfits, and ships them to your door every month. You wear them, send them back, and they handle the rest. No shopping, no laundry, no stress. Head to tailor.style, TAELOR.style, and use code ERIC25 for $25 off your first month. Link in the description below. Sandy, welcome to the World XP podcast. How are you today?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad at all. Do you want to do a quick intro for the people, who you are and what you do, before we hop
Sure.
into the rest of it?
Absolutely. I'm Sandy Martin. I run events, health events for a living. Next one's in New York this summer. And I wrote 2 books. The first is my passionate declaration that we should start with what we stop. And that's for optimizing our health. And the second one is biohacking. Well, sorry. That one's called Biohacking, starts with no. You know, when we flub over our words, that this is real and not AI.
Yeah.
And so my second book is Biological Edge, and my event is called bioEDGE Longevity. And I am here because I suffered through a brain injury and the system not understanding how that could possibly have happened to me, and had to figure it all out on my own. So my story hopefully helps other people stand up for themselves in the face of doctors and
Very nice.
stubbornness.
Very nice. Question from the last guest is, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
Oh, I really love Santa Barbara, but I would probably choose, this is going to be cheesy. I really try to love where I am.
It's a good answer. We can go with that. Santa Barbara, I've never actually been. The only reason I know about that place, aside from geography stuff, is from the show Psych.
Ah,
Um, and it's always made me want to visit for literally no other reason, even though the show is not even filmed there at all. I think it's filmed in, like, Vancouver or somewhere. But anyways, so I want to start off with basically asking the question that I just asked you offline, which is, what makes your stuff different than the rest of the people who are saying, yeah, you got a cold plunge, or buy a gazillion-dollar hyperbaric chamber, or this peptide or that supplement, or this diet or that diet. And to be fair to a lot of those people, like Troy Lang is the most recent one that was on, right? Lots of great info, and that what he's doing is for people that have, I think, taken a step further. Like, the people that are going to him are already not eating McDonald's, right? To use
yeah.
the phrase that you used before. And so it's not that there's anything wrong with what they're doing, but I think based on what you said, you are targeted kind of to a different audience, whereas they're a bit more specialized, which is kind of,
Well,
it's where
I don't
I'm.
know.
Okay, go ahead.
I didn't watch that podcast and
Hmm.
I don't know who he is, but I know a lot of high performers
Hmm.
and athletes who still drink alcohol and 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 party all night, don't get all the sleep they need. I I think that there's plenty or who don't have time to eat at home, so they're eating out all the time, which is cooked on Teflon or they're getting takeout that comes in black plastic.
Yeah.
There's plenty, even among the rich and famous, to start eliminating to live better and feel better.
That's a fair point. Heaven forbid you see an NBA player out at the club somewhere. It's like
It happens, right?
once in a
Um,
while.
it's not just McDonald's.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Of course, there's other things as well. Anyways, floor is
So,
yours.
so the big idea that I'm bringing to the table is that we all have something, if not loads of things, because of the way modern society has put us in a comfort zone of things that are easy and smell nice and taste good. In this world, we're doing more harm to ourselves than we can optimize out with cold plunge, PEMF, hyperbaric, light therapy. I mean, I have a MagnaWave in my other room. It's made for horses, but I use it for PEMF. I have a V-Light helmet. I have a Neuronic helmet. I have the what you call it, the Thrive that goes on the head and the gut. I don't use them all every day. I left my hyperbaric chamber with my ex-husband. I was too big to move. And these are great. But when I started acquiring these things, I was really sick and they didn't help at all. And so the problem is that if we aren't figuring out what the root cause is, and root cause is so cliche now, I hate even saying the words, but if you don't know why you feel like shit, you can't just throw oxygen at it and feel better. And so, and certainly not a cold plunge if your body's not functioning properly, if your cells aren't communicating properly, that's added stress on top of stress. So if the problem is chronic inflammation, which is what my problem was with an unknown source, we didn't even know it was chronic inflammation until we figured out it was mold, then none of that does any good at all. And so I believe that anyone, regardless of what their situation is, regardless of whether or not they know their root cause, has something they can stop. And that's universal and it's free. And I'm tired of hearing people like Kara Swisher on CNN and YouTube talking about how longevity is great for those who have money and that it's not for people who don't have money. And that's just not true because everyone can stop harming themselves. And the rich do it as much as the poor people do it, but the rich just have fancier gadgets that help them get through longer, right? But there are obese, wealthy people. There are obese, poor people. And not everybody can afford a GLP-1, and the jury's out. We don't know. Looks good for longevity, but we don't know if that's really the answer or not. So when you're talking about regular people, the easiest, simplest, most cost-effective thing to do is to find something to stop.
Hmm. I want to touch before we get back onto exactly that. I want to touch on the mold piece because even like in my own house, my wife and I were at one point going like, do we have like mold? Because she was waking up with like brain fog and some other things and like and then we did some of those like little house tests or whatever, and it came back like probably a little bit more than we would have liked, but then we fixed some other things and it kind of went away. And then the other part that goes with that is when you Google how do you get rid of mold, it's like, yeah, you gotta like burn your house down. So then we were like, okay, well, if we fix the other things and we're feeling better, maybe hopefully not. But what, well, I don't know. I don't even know what I'm asking, but how did you figure it out that that's what it was, and how did you fix it?
At first, I thought I was depressed. At
Hmm.
first, I felt a little down, a little tired, and I took a couple days off and my symptoms got worse. And then I took 2 weeks off. And by that 2 week stretch ending, when I thought I'd burnt out, I thought I fried a circuit, I was operating at such a level that that was reasonable to assume. But I just kept getting worse the more time I was at home. And so I went and I booked an appointment with a neurologist immediately, got in 2 weeks after that. I wrote a whole list of symptoms that are in my book. I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but the biggest thing was I felt like I was buffering, like the spinny wheel on the Mac or Netflix buffering. Like I was kind of stuck and frozen and I couldn't get through a sequence. And then that proceeded to get worse. But that neurologist sent me for a brain scan. Like Dr. Amen, if your audience is familiar, I got a SPECT scan done, but it was during COVID and I didn't want to travel. And because I was of that world, I was of conventional medicine at the time. I wasn't into any of this stuff. And I was afraid to get on a plane. And so I stayed close to home and I had a brain scan done improperly. And so I meditated. They put me in a room that was dark. So I laid down on the table with my eyes closed. And so meditation quiets the frontal lobe, and eyes closed quiets the back of the brain. And it looked like I'd hit my head. And so he diagnosed me with a traumatic brain injury based on the scan that wasn't done properly. And then he's the one that told me about hyperbaric. He told me about neurofeedback, and he recommended a drug called nimodipine that they give to stroke victims to open up the blood vessels of the brain. And I thought that sounded pretty severe. And then the doctor at the hyperbaric clinic said, asked me what protocol had been recommended, and I told him, and he goes, "Oh, Dr. So-and-so?" I was like, "How do you know?" And he said, "Well, he's the only one that recommends that drug." So that was my first no. When I heard that, I was like, "I'm not taking this drug." And then at that moment, I had nowhere to turn. I did buy my own hyperbaric chamber at that point because it was recommended and this guy thought it would be fine. We didn't know it was anything other than a brain injury of unknown origin. And I just kept trying to get my hands on anything I could about health and reading and watching YouTube videos. And eventually I came across Dave Asprey's book that described his SPECT scan. He described his toxic pattern, which I could see on my scan. And his story is mold. And I tested for mold. I tested for everything I could think of in between. Like at one point, somebody suggested I had arsenic poisoning, and I tested for arsenic. And that was a nightmare because the lab technician called me, not Everly Well that sold me the test, reputable company, totally fine. But the lab in between called me on the phone and said, "I'm not supposed to call you, but you have so much arsenic in your body, you might just die. You need help right now." And it was a crab cake. Crab cake has a natural arsenic in it that I'd eaten 36 hours prior to taking the test,
I
and I
told
was
you you were
taking,
gonna die because of a crab cake. That is
yeah,
unreal.
yeah. I didn't know that crab cakes had arsenic in them. And I didn't know, I knew that activated charcoal was making me feel better. I didn't know it was going to make me pee out every bad thing in my body into that test that I took the next morning. And so I flushed all the arsenic at once with that activated charcoal.
Oh.
So be careful about your home testing too. Like it's great that we're empowered to take some of these tests on our own, but if we don't know what we're doing, like I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I thought I was going to die. But when someone says you might just die, that's fucking awful.
That is unreal.
The amount of stress it put on my body in that moment took me a month to recover. Because that's the nocebo effect. We've got the placebo effect, but the nocebo effect is when you think you might die, and then what that does to the body. I went for chelation. They tested my blood, sent it out before they started chelation. So 10 days later, I found out I didn't actually have arsenic poisoning after 2 rounds of chelation. It's fine. It's all good. So Dave Asprey says, mold's bad. And I go, I'll test for mold. And then turns out I had mold running through my body. I had the inflammation markers to match. I had the MRI scan that showed all the fuzziness. Everything lined up. I had to burn my house down. I mean, it's a joke, but it felt that way. I got rid of almost everything I owned. It was traumatic. And there's a whole industry that profits off of that. And my doctor who recommended that was very aggressive and very domineering and required 13 grand up front or he wouldn't see me. But he was the only mold doctor in town. And by that point, I was desperate.
Mm-hmm.
I had been running a company and then I couldn't read a spreadsheet and I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker. It went from my brain being scrambled, which never got better until I started on the right path, to not being able to stay awake past 7. I was a high performer working 14 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week. That was my life. And I loved it. I wasn't depressed about my life. I got sick.
Yeah.
And a friend who runs a mold testing company called Got Mold, he explained to me that the reason it hit my brain first was probably because I was painting an area that was that had mold behind the walls.
Yeah.
And that the paint fume brought it straight into my brain. And so once I got out of the moldy environment. I did a gentle detox because I'd had a couple of bad reactions to some recommendations. And then I slowly got better. But the stuff that
Wow.
got it out of my body was all free. All free. I didn't have to spend 100 grand.
Yeah. So, well, what'd you use to get it out?
Chia seeds. Ridiculous. I mean, I did a bunch of things. Like I went on low dose naltrexone for a little while.
Hmm.
That helps to bring the inflammation down. Um, I, goodness, the aloe vera pills helped pull it out. Activated charcoal on occasion. I pulsed that a little bit. That helped pull it out. But despite the fact that a genetic test was one of the things that I was charged for, he couldn't read it. So I still don't know to this day if I have APOE4. The fourth allele is the one that they know makes it harder to clear mold and other toxins from the body. I don't know if I have that or not. I'm very few people can actually ever get better if they get sick from mold, but I am better. And I still have some brain issues that chose not to wire the bitch back that was stuck in here. She was annoying. And so there's some trade-offs in letting her go. But I'm happier and I can still run a company. I'm just not 14 hours a day,
Yeah.
6 days a week anymore.
Oh, that's crazy. That's crazy. Well, I hope we don't have it anyways, because that would
Yeah,
suck.
you don't want to go through that.
But no, I mean, I don't know. We've been here for a couple of years and it's been fine, relatively speaking. Anyways. Okay, so you go through that and then actually, let's go back to the first thing that you mentioned, which is cutting things out. And so we talked before about some of like the plastics and things cooked on, I
Mm,
forgot what word the material was.
Teflon.
Um, yeah. So what are other things that, because I think, at least for me personally, like I know about in terms of like food, what I should and shouldn't eat. But now I see things like, okay, this Tupperware doesn't have BPA, and I'm like, okay, fantastic. That sounds great. Or a pan that has non-stick, and then you'll see a post that says that's actually bad for you. You should only use cast iron. Um, like what are things that people are using in everyday life that like seem kind of innocuous that are actually a problem?
Keurig pods. Um,
Well, I don't drink coffee, so go me.
okay. I was going to say after that, your drip coffee maker.
Yeah.
But even the bags,
Hmm.
the tea bags, say if you're not taking loose leaves and steeping it in a stainless steel container in your mug, then you're getting plastics in the bag around your tea. Maybe the biggest thing is your to-go cup through any place like Starbucks or anywhere. All of those to-go cups are lined with plastics. Um, I, I I would love to start the movement where young people start to associate cologne and perfume and fragrances of any kind with bad hormones because that's what it causes. All of that stuff. So if young men, 18 years old, have the testosterone levels of men in their 50s 60 years ago. And so this is one of the like if athletic working out, if you're not recovering the way from maybe a mild injury that you think you might, maybe stop putting on cologne. It's the wildest thing, but these tiny little disruptors called phthalates in the plastics and in the fragrances affect our hormones and they're affecting the fertility of people, men and women. And they cause us to pack on fat. They make it harder to detoxify our bodies. Like my body needed time to detox. Movement is what allows the body to release the toxins, sweating and movement and gentle movement. I went for manual lymphatic drainage massages. So I did that too, which helped, just helps move everything out. It's the body is designed to do it. The body is designed to be healthy. You know, AI, as brilliant as it is, only has written language.
Hmm.
It doesn't know what the body knows. The body has a billion years of data encoded within, and it knows how to heal a cut. It knows how to regulate temperature. It knows how to keep us hydrated in a drought. Women can have babies during famine. I mean, there is so much that we're capable of if we get out of our own way. But when
Hmm.
we're addicted to screens and we're addicted to stress and we consume these chemicals in our food and our air and our water, we're adding we're adding work to the body. The body will handle it until it doesn't. But like stress, for instance, in a normal situation, our cortisol rises, so we wake up in the morning and then falls throughout the day so we can go to sleep at night and rinse and repeat. And then, you get a little stressed, you get a little boost, so you get some energy, releases a little glucose at the same time, and then it comes down if we can move it out. We have 90 seconds to move the cortisol out. And so that's one thing to eliminate. If you get really stressed, find a way to flush that stress out of your body really fast, or you're going to have elevated cortisol for a prolonged period of time and elevated glucose for a prolonged period of time. Now, what happens if you do that too often is that the only thing that will give you energy is to feel stress because you've trained your body. Only when I'm stressed do I ever get a boost. And then the body says, I'm done. You don't get any more. And then that's called hypocortisolism, where you have a flatlining of cortisol and you struggle to get out of bed every day. That happens to high performers. And light therapy and oxygen therapy, maybe they help, but you've got to eliminate the emotional sensitivity that's causing an inflamed response to your life. Stress.
So yeah, I don't disagree with anything that you just said. And I think a lot of, at least every time I've talked with kind of a health person, and it seems to come down to, at least in my head, I've summarized basically everything to like, if your body is chronically inflamed and you're stressed, then you're going to have insert whatever problem is, whatever way that your body deals with that. Might it be some digestion thing or depression or anxiety or whatever the thing is, like your body, like if those two things are present, you're gonna have problems.
Yeah.
And to me, eliminating those two things is, or at least mitigating them, is borderline, I'll say very difficult. Because every time you walk out into the world, you've got some guy that's cutting you off in traffic in a metal box that's going 70 miles an hour. You've got like, oh yeah, gas was this price last week and now it's X number more. And how am I gonna put a food on the table? And oh, now I've had a headache and I'm gonna do a mold test and now you're stressed about what that comes back with. Or you've got whatever the case may be is, and all these things just
Everywhere.
happen everywhere you go all the time. And then you eat. If you're not very careful with what you eat, you're in the same boat there where you've got these dyes and seed oils and chemicals and whatever else that are in the food, and it's like it has become more than a full-time job to like even keep track of all these things. And every time you turn around, to me at least, every time I turn around, there's something new that I shouldn't be doing. Like now, no more cologne. All right, noted. It's like there's like every time there's a new thing where it's like, all right,
Yeah.
it's like, all right, I've got a good handle on it. And then I talk with Sandy and she's like, no, you don't actually. There's another one that you got to keep track of. And so like
Oh.
I think I put a lot of energy and time into this, but it just seems so like unreasonably and then on the other side on the news you turn on whatever and it's like Trump is tweeting that he's gonna blow a civilization off the face of the earth and you're like, why? Even though it doesn't even and like it doesn't involve you to some, I mean to some extent you live in the country that does, your tax whatever. It doesn't directly affect you to some extent.
Yeah.
Um under the scope of this conversation. There's a different conversation in which it directly involves you. You need to be involved in what's going on and whatever. But for this conversation, it doesn't directly involve you. So
Mhm.
how do you, I mean, how do you cope with that? How do you deal with that? How do you start to mitigate things and eliminate things like one by one where
Oh,
these
well,
things start to like maybe take a weight off a shoulder here and there?
well, I can completely relate to the feeling of overwhelm at all the things. Like when I find a new thing, I'm like, great. So I feel you in this moment about the cologne. That happened with me with my dishwasher tablets because there's a plastic that I didn't know was a plastic
Oh,
called
fantastic.
PLA. And so I was buying the thing I thought didn't have plastic but had hidden plastic in it. So I had to change that too. My mom had a stroke. I was at Dave Asprey's biohacking conference last year when I got the call from my mom from the hospital that she had had a stroke. And she had been intermittent fasting and on a ketogenic diet and was walking every day and was really doing all the things. And she thought she'd dialed it in. Her blood pressure had come down. Um, she had a stroke. So we get her out. Um, and she had the Magna Wave at the time. Had she not had the PEMF device at her house and she not sat on it, she might have gotten locked in syndrome. So
Mm,
I do believe that these biohacking things, even though they start with no, they have a lot of value.
yeah.
Um, and so we put her in rehab because she couldn't feed herself, and then turns out they were making it worse. They were raising her blood pressure every day, put her on 3 medications to try to get it down. It was this vicious cycle. We put her on N101 from Nathan Bryan. That was the thing that had kept it down before, but we didn't know. So she got on that, it came down, we got her out, put her immediately into a clinic with hyperbaric. And she went for hyperbaric 90 minutes a day, 6 days a week. A month later, she's able to walk on a ramp without holding onto a rail. She's happy. She was driving 2 weeks after that. I drove her to her last visit at the clinic in the first 4 week stint. And she said, just casually, just like it's nothing, she goes, stress can kill you. And I went, yeah, yeah, I know. She goes, no, really. And I said, yeah, mom. She goes, no, I mean it. And I said, yes, stress can cause a heart attack or stroke. And she said, "Ah, I wish I knew that before." And so, what she realized in coming out of that was that she had to let shit go. And thank goodness Mel Robbins had released her book, Let Them, at the same time she was healing, because my mom loves her and she watched all the podcasts. And my dad's a real pain in the ass. Like, the last place you want to take him is the grocery store. And she's lived with him for God knows how many years, going on 60 years. And they, he's just challenging. And she couldn't let it go. She was angry every time he annoyed her, which was maybe 200 times a day, like a lot. And then a few months later, we were talking and she was able to drive, but they were still going to Whole Foods together. Whole Foods, like that's the most annoying place you could take my dad. Expensive. It's not always what it looks like it is. And she said, yeah, it's fine. And I was like, what do you mean it's fine? He looks at all the ingredients, he checks all the prices. She goes, yeah, he can do whatever he wants. Like, what? And I said, a year ago, if I said you were going to go to the grocery, Whole Foods, every Sunday with dad, would you have believed me? She's like, no way. It's the same two people who are now going to the store once a week together in harmony because she decided it wasn't worth dying over and had she wished she'd known. Now, for me, so I like to say brain injuries are good for the women in my family. For me, when I lost my brain, there's a documentary about me running a Comic Con called Surviving SuperCon. And if you want to see a raging bitch, you'll see one there. And and it's not who I am anymore. That version of me just isn't worth it. Like, she got a lot of shit done. She could hold a lot of stuff in her head at once. But I was really judgmental and condescending, and it's not worth it. And now, so a couple days ago, I was walking my dog. He loves to meet all the dogs. If he doesn't get to meet them, he gets a little obnoxious. And so I encourage him to meet the dogs if they're friendly. Is your dog friendly? Yes. Okay, let's meet. That dog tried to attack my dog. And then so when I scooped down to pick up my little fluff ball, the other dog tried to pull me under and got my hoodie and was yanking me down. And so I was scared. Fozzie was scared. We're all scared. The owner of that dog is scared. He's never seen his dog act this way before. And I stand there holding Fozzie, and I'm calm, and I'm like, okay, they're not moving. I'm not moving. And I had to look at this man, and I said, you have to walk away. He was so traumatized that his dog had tried to attack me. He was frozen, and this would enrage most people, right? I was terrified. I was shaking. But the brain injury allowed me to see the whole situation. When I lacked the ability to follow a sequence, all I had was opportunity and presence. I had this expanded nature of reality. That was the beauty of what happened to me. So I can occasionally carry that with me, and it helps me alleviate stress. So I said, you have to walk away. And he literally said, what? It's like, you have to go now. And then he walked away apologizing profusely, and I haven't seen him since. But I could have, I had to shake it out of my nervous system. I sat by the water, I breathed, I did some things to pass it through because I knew I had to do that. And then I went home and I rested and I was fine. But some people will just start talking shit. Don't people know how to take care of their dogs? He shouldn't have been doing that. And everyone who I told the story to reacted in that way. And I was like, we're okay. We're okay. And being in the moment, I was okay. My hoodie got a hole in it, but I'm okay. Fozzie's okay. And that's the reality with presence, is that we don't have to be judgmental about what could have been. I'm okay. Yes, I'm scared. I have to shake that off, but I'm okay. And that's the hard part with stress, is to recognize it's just not worth it. That getting mad at him, I don't know who he is. I don't want to carry that. No one would fault me for being angry. But I never got angry because that's a sensation that harms me, not him.
Hmm.
So to your
Yeah,
point about stress.
there's a lot of power in that to just have it wash over you. And yeah, even there's one thing that bugs me particularly way more than it should, which is like when you're in a parking lot and somebody just walks into the road with their head down like on their phone and they don't even look at you. I'm like, my reaction is I could run you over right now and you would have no idea, and it bugs me way more than it should. Um, but that's another thing that I focused on, where I feel this little flash and then I have to be like, it's fine. It's going to continue to happen. You are like you're already in the parking lot. It's fine. Like, it's not like you're going to be later than you already are or earlier than you already are. You're already here. Um, yeah, no, 100%. And I've tried, I mean, yeah. But it does get a bit like, then you get into the stress land and then you hear all the coping mechanisms, right? You need to meditate and you need to journal and you need to do this and you need to do that. And that's another piece of the pie where it's like all of these things that we've talked about, whether it's the optimization piece, the cutting out the plastics piece, the cutting out the or like the diet piece, the and then there's like the mental piece. And all these things like intertwine in a way where, and we talked about this a little bit offline, where it's like you actually have to try stuff and then figure out what works best for you. Like what works best for me might not work for you, and so on and so forth. And so I think a lot of these things are like generally good guidelines, but to go back a little bit to like the overwhelming thing, it comes into like, okay, well, how do I even know where to start? Like the mental
Yeah.
health people have given me 47 options on how to journal and meditate and go for walks and do this and do that. And then, okay, so I have to do that. And then I also have to make sure I read all the ingredients labels on all the food that I buy. And I also have to make sure that the Tupperware doesn't have this thing. And then I also have to make sure that, like, for example, like this deodorant, not an advertisement, but on it, it says like, where did it go?
I don't think that one has phthalates, does it? Is that one
Yeah, I
fragrance
don't,
free?
yes, that's what it said on the, wow, I can't even find it on the thing now. Um, this company, I believe, is generally that. But yeah, so then like I bought it, and then the next day I saw an ad on Instagram saying like they say they're phthalate free, they're lying, and I'm like, I don't know what any of these chemical compounds. So, but like I guess what I was getting at with the earlier question and kind of what I want to get back to is like where do you even start? Because when you open the door to this world that you and I kind of you live in more than I do, but I kind of dabble in from time to time, you open the door and it's just like everything that you've ever known is giving you cancer. And you're like, "Oh, okay, well that's fantastic. Do I just go live in a hut now and like grow tomatoes?" And it feels, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I do know what you mean, and it sucks. Um, yeah, I think you just pick something because the it is hard. And maybe the most valuable part of the journey is to learn how to do hard things. And there's a part of the brain, if you heard Huberman talk about this with the anterior mid-cingulate cortex
Hmm.
and the microsucks and
Yeah, but
practicing the hard things.
for those who haven't heard, if you want to
Sure.
describe it real quick.
So there's this region of the brain that connects intention with action. And the body is constantly analyzing, well, this region of the brain, the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, is checking the body's reserves and the risk reward, the effort reward to see if it's worth it. And so the more you do something and realize it doesn't kill you, the stronger it gets and the more it believes you are capable. And so if you take a cold shower, it doesn't have to be super cold, but nobody wants to take a cold shower until they've built that muscle. But even every time it's like, oh, am I ready? And so it, even though it may be invigorating, it's always the brain is like, wait a second. And overcoming that again and again and again is what helps us have more autonomy over our lives, to live our lives with greater intention and not just in response to what's around us. And so it's that region is scanning the body for, do I have what it takes to do this? Can I match the intention? So if you're having trouble following through on something, you want to change your diet or lifestyle and you want to know where to pick a thing that you know sucks a little, but not so much that you can't keep doing it, because you have to train your body how to do the hard thing. And for me, when I was sick, to exercise, I couldn't get out and exercise, but I could lie in the bed and tense all my muscles and then let them go. Tense all my muscles and let them go. Because if you don't tell your muscles they're required for life, then they start to atrophy. They prepare you for death. And so the starting point is different for absolutely everyone. But the key is to be able to set an intention in your life and follow through.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think also the to just pick one. I think that's the hardest part often with
Yeah.
the overwhelming. And when I'm like training kids in soccer or whatever, and they're like, there's so much I need to get better at. It's like, where do we start with this or that? Or it's like you just gotta pick and you just go. Or even when like people at work when they're like, I don't know how to which project or which part of the project should I prioritize? And it's like, okay, well, the more you sit there just thinking about it, unless there's like if you've planned enough to where like there's not a super specific order that you have to do things in, just pick and just start. And
Mhm.
And that happens at home. It's like, oh, there's so much to do. I've got to clean this and I've got to mow the lawn. I've got to do this and you got to do that. And before you know it, you've spent an hour umming and ahhing about which one you're going to start with. And you would have
Yep.
been done with half of it already.
Right.
Um, and so just picking, I think, is like there's a power in kind of like understanding that that's where you're at, and then either going on your phone for like a number generator, say option one is mowing the lawn, option two is folding the laundry, option three is dishes, and just like have it do it for you.
Hmm.
Um, there's a real power in that sort of thing, I think. But
That's a great analogy. I'm stealing that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, use it, 100%.
I love that.
Um, okay, so you've been doing all that. You mentioned the documentary earlier, and I'm scrolling through your bio and the thing and real quick, but you mentioned the documentary. I'm curious about how that even showed up on your radar slash like how that even came to be. And then also how it ended up at Comic-Con and not, well, any of the health things anywhere.
So before I got sick, I was running Comic Cons with my ex-husband. He had started
Ah,
them
okay.
in 2006. And we were running them through together until the end of 22. But COVID was devastating for us. We had 4 large live events. We had to give 400 grand in refunds straight away.
Oof.
Yeah. So stress. There was a lot of stress in 2020. And then I rebuilt the infrastructure to take that entire business of a festival in person and that celebrity meet and greet portion. And I built a system for doing it online virtually. And we quadrupled our revenue. And I
Wow.
did that up through from March to September. And then I took a little break. I call it my Karate Kid moment where I painted an area just to shut my brain down, do something physical. And there was mold behind the walls and I didn't know. And 2 weeks later, I couldn't function. I couldn't run reports on the system I myself had built. It
Wow.
was terrible.
That's the Comic-Con piece. Well, that
Mm-hmm.
took a turn. That's cool though. How'd you guys get into Comic-Con? That's like and also it's funny that you mentioned that because the episode of Psych that I just watched in the background while I was turning my brain off and doing other things or was one where they were at Comic-Con.
Oh, that's funny.
So yeah, that's wild.
Yeah,
So
that's
how'd you
his passion. It's his life.
uh-huh.
He still does it.
Okay.
The events now are called GalaxyCon. It was SuperCon before. We sold that and then started GalaxyCon.
Okay. Gotcha. Sounds good. Fair enough. All right. What's the other thing I was gonna ask before I forgot? Oh yeah, the misdiagnosis thing. There's been
Mm.
people on the show lots of times before. I had this woman Natalie who is making this like probiotic sugar substitute thing called Dulsa. Her aunt, I believe, had MS and they were doing with like carnivore diet and a few other things and
Mhm.
staving it off and eventually they had to put her into like rehab or whatever. As
Mm.
soon as she went into rehab and they started giving her like the hospital food, just tanked. And it's like and to watch that and she was on the show and just like describing like watching that happen is
Mhm.
gotta be, speaking of stress and anger, one of the most infuriating things ever because like you told them you're like, hey, this is what's working for the time being, and they're like, well, because policy says we have to give them a chemical bread sandwich with lettuce that's not really lettuce and
Yeah.
deli meat that's whatever that is, cardboard. And
Yeah.
you're like, I told you. And to have it affect somebody that you like or that you love, like that's in your life like that, has got to be extremely annoying. And then the other piece, there was another woman on the show she was misdiagnosed with bipolar
Mm.
disorder, and she was on SSRIs for like 20 years, and then by accident, she had like an allergic reaction to something, and they took her off it for a week at one of the rehab places, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden it like cleared up, and it's like 20 years of your life just like gone in and out of rehab, all sorts, and it's
Yeah.
like you continue to hear stories like this, and it's annoying to some extent because I don't want to have to be having this conversation with you. I want to be able to go to a doctor and be like, "Yep, sounds good. Give me that and I will go home and everything will be fine." But that's not the world that we're living in now either.
No, and I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
I really don't. But when we can test for fasted insulin levels, but we don't as part of a routine panel. And all we're testing for is your blood glucose fasted still under 100? And then for like that period of time between 30 and 50, when people are hovering close, well, it doesn't look worrisome yet. We'll just keep watching it. But this is the body staying
Okay.
in regulation. We'll just keep watching it. The body's handling it by pumping up the insulin levels. So your insulin levels are up here, hardening your arteries. All the while, we're just going to keep looking at it. And then suddenly collapse.
Yep.
Oh, diabetic. You'll probably get Alzheimer's too. And that's like regular people.
Yeah.
People who think they're eating healthy, people who are watching their diet and lifestyle. This is not your average obese person story. This is your average American who's going through this. And if that isn't negligence, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
And we just we blame ourselves. We we blame ourselves when we don't have the motivation, if we're lethargic, if we're exhausted. Like, cut yourself a break. Maybe it's something in your environment. Maybe you're host to a parasite or a fungus or a bacterial overgrowth that's affecting your mood or your ability to heal, or maybe you're having an allergic reaction.
Yeah.
Let's check these things out before we start beating ourselves up for not living the lives that we dreamed we'd live.
Yeah. On your point about the average American, I think I read some stat that was like 75% of the average Americans couldn't pass the military like
Oh,
base PT test or whatever. So like yeah, it is I mean it's really not it's not we as a country are not in a great state at the moment.
yeah.
But on the like fungus or parasite thing or like how should people think about even like going to get checked out for that? Like they go to their doctor and they ask for what? Like are these things expensive? Like how would that work if somebody was to go in and just ask for that?
Your doctor won't. Your doctor will refuse.
So how do you go do it then?
Um, Doctors of Oriental Medicine, DAOMs, or acupuncturists, as they're often called, have access to tests like these. Functional medicine doctors have access. Um, you can get a 160 panel biomarker test done by Function Health for like $365 a year. Um, Ways to Well in all states but two has a telemedicine program with extensive biomarker testing. Some IV clinics will do it because they want to sell you IV drips, but you don't have to buy the IV drips. You can just take advantage of their cheap introductory testing offer. You'll have to find somebody who isn't making their money off of insurance companies,
Hmm.
because that's the holdup. If your doctor makes the bulk of his or her money off of an insurance provider, to deviate from the insurance model in any way risks that they lose that payer. And so they go from 3 payers to 2 payers, or one or none, and then they have to remake themselves. And they are not allowed. It's not your doctor. Your doctor would love to help you, but they work for corporations, they work for these big systems. I mean, there must be 50 different neurologists at my mom's clinic that handle every type of brain thing there is, and one won't evaluate the other for
Hmm.
liability reasons, and they're just managing risk. They're more concerned about their own risk and what insurance will pay for than they are about our outcomes. And we have to take responsibility for our own outcomes because they just won't.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because, and the reason I ask is because I don't want people to listen to this and come out of this all doom and gloom because
No.
there are options and there are ways that you can help yourself. And I think like Ways to Well is one that Brigham Bueller's been on Rogan a bunch of times. So if you're interested in what he's got to say, there's a gazillion hours of him on podcasts talking about what they do in the insurance industry and how they're like it's a basically an advertisement for the guy that runs the place. So if you're interested in something like that, go listen to that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And there's a I think it's called GI map test, and there's a gut ID test. There's all kinds of stuff out there. Like,
mhm. Yeah,
we can get the answers.
yeah, 100%. So just go for people listening, go look. If you have questions, put them in the comments or whatever, and I can try and find you answers, or I can talk to Sandy and get you an answer or whatever. But yeah, don't be like we talked about before. Don't try to not be overwhelmed by the gazillion places of information out there. Like pick one, go with it, and then start from there. Take the baby steps, find people that you trust, and kind of build it up one step at a time. Um, okay, let's talk. We haven't talked about your stuff yet. So we did mention, do you want to talk about the books at all a little bit more, or you want to go to BioEdge to the summit?
Well, the summit's in the summer. I think I'm changing the date tomorrow. I think that's what that phone call was when we first got
Okay.
started. Um, so the website is bioedgelongevity.com. Look up the date because by the time this comes out, I think it will be different than what's on the website right now. We ran into some trouble going up against FIFA in terms of New York City and hotel space. So
Yeah, that
we're
makes
making a
sense.
minor adjustment, and that'll be on the website. The thing I'm most proud of that I've built online is the bioEDGE Decoder, which is bioedgedecoder.com. And that's an AI chat service that is ephemeral. It's not anything saved on my end. And you can tell it what you're experiencing and it will ask you questions to help you understand yourself better. Its whole purpose is to help you understand yourself better. It is not intended to give you a diagnosis. It won't come up with a conclusion, but it'll tell you which systems of the body are governing the signal that you're being sent. I like to talk about signals instead of symptoms. And so it'll tell you what sends those signals, give you some ideas. Maybe your doctor will entertain a conversation about that. Um, but that's the thing I'm
Yeah,
most happy with that I have made this year.
that makes total sense. I think also, and you can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but and I've had people close to me deal with this where they will go into the doctor and they say they're feeling XYZ, and doctor says, "Well, I don't know, here's a pill." And they feel not listened to and not heard, and in some times even goes so far as to say like gaslit. And it's like,
Mhm.
what are some of your recommendations for getting through to that without being there's a way to like run in there and like kick the door down. But to do it, like, what's a good way to do that and to kind of handle that situation in terms of like what would you go into the doctor's office with in terms of information, maybe proof, not that you should need proof and that's a different conversation for a different day, but like how would you approach that?
That's a good question. And I don't think I would have had an answer till this week, but like my partner is a traditional doctor kind of guy. He's not like me at all. And he's retired military and he has his military doctors and they've always done right for him and that's who he's going to see. But he's not getting the tests that I want him to get. So I paid for him to get a function health test and we're going to do that together next week. And so I think one of the things you can do is just show up with test results. And they can't argue a fasted insulin level. But when my dad got tested for testosterone and it came back at like 600 or something for a 77-year-old man, it was outrageous. And I was like, what about the free testosterone? And the doctor said, I don't know what you're talking about. And I said, well, why don't you just look it up? Can you order it, please? And he ordered it. And it was really low. And then he wouldn't even treat him for it. He said if he wants to be treated for that, he has to go back to his primary care. And insurance companies don't want to pay for testosterone therapy. So what my dad would have had to go through to get testosterone therapy covered by insurance was more than he was willing to do. So now he's just suffering with low testosterone. But you can get the answers. And if you have the the stomach to make the fight, sometimes you can get it covered, or you can find inexpensive services that, I mean, hormone therapy is not inexpensive anywhere, but there's, places like Hims that can offer it at less than a regular price, but it's still expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so the summit. I just quickly clicked on the website to see who was coming, and I can imagine that to some
We
extent,
haven't announced everybody who's coming yet.
well, the ones that are on, at least on here. So can I
Well,
talk about the ones that are on the website already or no?
no, let's not. Let's let them go to the website
Okay,
because it's
sounds
just not. If you're on the website and you'll see the past speakers
okay.
from the homepage, and I've had people like JP Sears, Chris Palmer, Andrew Bustamante. I've had all kinds of really great speakers in the past. Natalie Needham, who's a peptide expert. Some really, really amazing speakers. Ian White on regenerative medicine, Sarah Turner with light therapy. Um, so many amazing people.
Okay.
And then we're still working on this year's lineup.
Okay, perfect. No worries at all. But the follow-up to that was going to be, I bet probably the experience of putting together Comic-Cons and that sort of thing has lent itself very nicely to putting together something like this. So just for my own curiosity as well, like what goes into like one, is this, so you mentioned previous years. So when did the idea like start and then how did you bring the first one together? Because I can imagine once the first one comes together a little bit, you've got like, oh, we'll come back and it becomes a little bit easier. You've got some of the building blocks in place. You've got a few things that you just have to change the dates on and other things like that. But like the first one, where did the idea come from? What does it take to put something like this together and how does all that work? How do you get those some of those people that you just mentioned? I'm sure they're very busy.
Yeah.
And especially for the first one, be like, hey, I'm doing this thing. Can you come talk at it? And they're like, I've never heard of that. And you're like, well, it's gonna be the biggest thing ever, right? But so how does all that work?
Yeah, you got to be careful not to get out in front of your skis.
Hmm.
Chris Palmer was the first person I reached out to who was an established expert in this industry, and he said yes right away. And he's so generous of spirit and heart and intellect, and he's so wonderful. And um, that may have given me a false sense of confidence. I just rolled through as if everybody was going to say yes, and that first year was easier than running a Comic Con. In the documentary, I say not that I've personally had a baby because I have not, but I think it's like childbirth. If you could, I've heard people say if you could remember the pain, you'd never do it again. That's true of events, big or small. If you could remember what it took to put the event together, you wouldn't do another one. It's it's all year long for 3 days of your life. And then if you have multiple, then you're doing that just a few times a year,
Hmm.
where all of your effort is on a hope and a prayer. And then you show up and it comes together. It's wild. It's amazing. It's amazing to watch it built in a day. The marketing can be maddening. Last year, right before my event, Facebook changed their health advertising policy, and I didn't know. I just noticed that overnight I couldn't sell a ticket anymore, no matter what I spent. And so I stopped spending it. And so you're up against so many different kinds of things. And right now we're up against this idea that health is, I think, the second most divisive thing in the country after immigration. Like, people are sick of it. I mean, it's remarkable and refreshing to have a conversation like this with you, who before today was a total stranger, and that we can, I don't know what your beliefs are. And I mean, you know more about mine now, and we've come to get to know one another, but this doesn't happen in regular life. People aren't talking. People are tuned out, turned off. It's aggravating. It causes people stress to hear about these things. And even though I said the cologne thing and that was overwhelming, like that's, I still hope people can take away that it's just pick one, just start somewhere, just honor your body's natural intelligence. Your body is smarter than you are. Give it a chance. So I guess I kind of run the event that way. The event has its own intelligence. It has its own set of things that have to be done. I work for it. Um, I own it. I produce it,
Hmm.
but it is bigger than I am now. So like, it has needs. I feed the beast and give it what it needs, and it comes together.
Yeah. The divisive piece that you mentioned, I think it's true, and I think it's also interesting because I remember there would be times when, like when we were all in the office before COVID a little bit more, where like people would make comments on what I was bringing for lunch. It's like, oh, it's just chicken and rice and broccoli again, isn't it? And it's like, well, yeah, it is. So go kick rocks. But um, but it becomes, I think for that reason that it becomes like, and this is just me kind of speculating, is when you know that you need to do something and you don't know how to do it or where to do it, it's easier to either ignore it. And then when somebody who is doing that thing is like staring you in the face, then it's a lot easier to get defensive than it is to make a giant change to your life. And that's true of other things outside of health as well.
Mhm.
But our entire country and a lot of the world has just been slapped in the face with like, hey, yeah, everything you're consuming is killing you basically. And some people are choosing to dive in, other people are choosing to not and kind of like look the other way. And
And I've learned to be more gentle. Like
yes,
one of
well,
my,
that's exactly where I was going is like, it's not out of
yeah.
like malice or whatever that people get defensive about it. It's like
Mhm.
often it's they don't understand or they don't know where to start. And so that gentle, exactly, that's exactly where I was going. It's like you need to help people and bring them along, especially
Mhm.
people that are in your family or people that you care for. It's like you can't be the overwhelming person who's like, yes, I'm not eating anything that you cooked for me at Thanksgiving, mom.
Oh,
It's like
I
you can't do that. You
know.
can't do that. But
Yeah.
slowly but surely, hey, next year maybe instead of spraying it with this canola oil thing that's been mass produced with machines, use some olive
Mhm.
oil. And like you go step by step by step, and then it can see some results. And um, I don't know,
And
is
for
it,
those of us
yeah.
that are working so hard to eliminate things, and we go into these environments with our friends or and our family where it's rude to refuse,
Hmm.
um, I just take a deep breath because I know the stress is more harmful. I take a deep breath and I act like it's hormesis. It's like a cold plunge.
Yeah.
And there are people who will say that you can't get the canola oil out of your body. And I'm like, bullshit. I don't eat it. I very rarely encounter it at all, but I eat at restaurants. You think it's
Hmm.
not in restaurants? Do you eat
Always.
out? Like,
Yeah.
it's in every salad dressing at every restaurant, except maybe True Food. Like,
Yeah.
it's everywhere. And so if I go into someone's home and I act like I'm at a restaurant, we don't preach at the restaurant. It doesn't do anybody any good. We can't preach at the family.
Yeah.
We could bring a
Yeah.
dish.
100%. I asked one time I was at a restaurant. I was like, "Yeah, well, out of curiosity, what oil do you cook with?" And the guy was like, "Let me go check." And then he came back and he had a look on his face, and I immediately in my head I was like, "Oh, he probably thinks that I asked because I'm allergic to something." So very quickly I was like, "I'm not allergic to anything. I'm not gonna die." But yeah, um, so that was a funny experience. But
Yeah.
but okay, so back to the event a little bit, and then. What is it like to talk to some of these people who are
Mm.
they're running giant companies and they're big names and they've got these presence on whatever social media, this and that. Um, like Bustamante, for instance, who you mentioned.
Mm.
So I didn't spill any beans there. But he's going on all sorts of podcasts, doing all sorts of things. Like I wouldn't call him necessarily a household name, but some of the others might be. What is it like to kind of interact with these people as far as oftentimes they're busy. It's like my people will talk to your people. Like,
Mhm.
how does that, just out of my own curiosity, as kind of somebody who I don't have events like you do, but I talk to people to try and see if they want to come on the show and that sort of thing. And so I've got one kind of bucket of experience and you've got another. So I'm curious as to your experience with that.
He's a good story. So I stalked him. I went to one of his events. and I bought the VIP pass so I could sit with him at dinner so that he would know me. And I'm very rarely am the kind of person that wants a selfie with famous people,
Yeah.
but I got the selfie with him because he was doing selfies with people so I could send the photo to his team later. This is me.
Yeah.
I was at the party and I got the contact information for his manager. And because everybody like that has a manager, even though it's his company, right? He's got somebody who manages his day to day. And so I reached out to that person with the photo and I said, I'd really love to have Andy involved. Here's what I propose we do and how to, what can we do? They talked it out, they agreed. And then in his case, it was just really funny because I had asked him at his event what protocols in the CIA were considered biohacking. What kind of biohacking things do they do? And he's like, we don't really get into biohacking till it's rest and recovery. And in that moment, I was like, I'll tell him later. And then so he got concerned that he wasn't aligned with my event and didn't understand why he was going. And so we all got on a call together. And that was the first time I had a real like person to person conversation with him, like you and I are having in this moment. And I said, you answered my question like this, but here's how you're biohacking and you don't even know it's biohacking. Do you do this, this, and this in the field? And he's like, yes. Well, that's all biohacking because biohacking is about optimizing your internal and external environment for optimal performance. And so like your agents are trained not to stare at somebody that they're following because they can sense it. That's biohacking. That's adjusting my electromagnetic fields so that I cannot be detected by the person I'm following. And people don't think about that.
Mhm.
People think of us as flesh and bone, but we are an energy field too. You can measure the electromagnetic field with current technology up to 6 feet away from the body surrounding the heart. And so you have to be careful with your field. You have to slow your breathing down. You have to keep a certain kind of physiological state, psychophysiological state, in order to operate at that level. And then about 2 weeks later, I saw him on a podcast explaining all that as biohacking. And I was like, yes, I had an impact on the world because now he's talking about it in language that other people can understand.
Mhm.
So he talked about brain hacking and biohacking. And so he came to the event prepared and ready.
Yeah.
And that was fun. And at the event, he's just super chill. And
Yeah.
he's like a celebrity at the event. So he's shaking hands and kissing babies and doing that whole thing.
Yeah. The picture thing is a good one. There's been a few people I've had pictures with that maybe I'll take a note, a leaf out of that notebook, and I will be sending out some DMs tonight.
There you go.
Um,
And
uh,
it came in handy for my marketing. I had a
yeah.
photo with him.
Yeah.
And so I did it all intentional in advance. I knew I was such an admirer of his and still am, but I decided that was going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Bought the VIP ticket, got the photo, had the meetings, and I had the whole marketing campaign planned out when I first began. But
Yeah.
when he started to talk about it on other podcasts, I could clip it too. He just gave me more and more marketing to use. It was awesome.
Yeah. I feel like once you get into that conversation, based on just our conversation today, I feel like once you get like the first yes or the first like, yeah, let's talk, I feel like you are confident that you will get that person at that point. Is that
Mhm.
true?
I I usually assume because of the effect it has on my physiology, I assume everybody wants to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm okay if it doesn't work out.
Yeah. Um, have we not talked about anything that is pertinent or that you want, or is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have?
No, but I will add, because it's close to one of the things we talked about, the overwhelming number of things we have to do for our mental state. I have a shortcut, and it's based on heart math science. And so it regulates the electromagnetic field of the heart, and it helps to smooth out your heart rhythm, and it raises your heart rate variability all at the same time. So if you get a stressful moment and you have to clear the cortisol out quickly, 3 minutes, you can do it in one. 3 minutes works better. Breathe in through your nose for 5 seconds and hum out through your nose, not with your mouth, but hum through your nose. The more nasally, the better. The 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out regulates the heart rhythm and increases the heart rate variability. And the nasal sound of the humming boosts nitric oxide production, which relaxes the blood vessels. And that combination is maybe Huberman's technique of the physiological sigh is better. I don't do that one. I do this one. I breathe in for 5 seconds and hum out for 5 seconds. Works great when you're alone in the car, especially if you get stressed out. I do it before meetings. It's just a way to just shift. And it shifts your heart. It's real. It's physiological. It's not emotional, although it will impact your emotions.
Huh. I'm gonna try that. Let's see. Well, I mean, there's a bunch more that I want to ask you, but I think we'll go down some rabbit holes that perhaps we slash me specifically don't necessarily have time for at the moment. Um, Tell the people where, if they are interested in learning more about the work that you're doing, or the summit, or the decoder, or any of the things that you've got going on, where should they go?
bioedgelongevity.com.
Perfect. That link will be in the description. I believe, if I recall correctly, all the social medias are the same.
Yeah.
The same handle.
Mhm.
Perfect. Um, Go check that stuff out. For those listening, there's merch from my side somewhere. It's below. I figured it out now. If you've been watching the last episodes, I've been pointing every which way on the screen. It's below. Go buy a shirt or a beanie or something and tell me if you like it. And yeah, check the stuff out. Go check out the summit, the decoder, all sorts. And we will see you guys next time.
Thanks, Eric.
Peace. Thanks for tuning in to the World XP podcast. If you want to watch another episode like this one, click there. If you want to subscribe, click there.